And now we welcome to the podcast back again, Charles McElwee, editor of Real Clear Pennsylvania. He's a contributing writer for Real Clear Politics and City Journal. Charles was with us about 6 weeks ago when we were looking at the Pennsylvania race. I'd ask him what happened, which is the obvious first question, but I understand that Peter Robinson has a bone to pick. Peter, pick that bone.
Charlie's putting up posts about driving through central Pennsylvania and seeing no posters for Fetterman at all. Oz is big, big, big. It's going to happen. It's going to Charlie gets me so excited. I put money on Oz and predict it whatever it's called in the prediction markets.
Crypto.
And election night, I was going fine. I'm up. The market's pushing me up and up and up. And then the thing just takes a nosedive. And I lost $5 before I was able to close out my position. So, Charlie, you owe me a Venti Grande at a Starbucks in Philadelphia.
It's a deal. I'll buy two. But it's also a lesson. You never take...
never listen to you is what's
Irish Catholic luck. You don't. For me, you don't bet like that. Yeah.
So what happened? What went wrong? What happened?
It was a perfect storm, wasn't it? And look, full disclosure, we talked a few weeks ago, and all indications were a very Republican mood in Pennsylvania. I felt this. I'm driving all over the state. That's true. And while there were Fetterman signs throughout the state, when you talk to any voter in any locale, the sense was that the Republican Party had the upper hand. And instead, in hindsight, we saw how it was a perfect opportunity for the Democratic Party. So what were the components to this perfect storm? One, it goes back to 2019. Republicans agreeing to an election reform bill in the Pennsylvania state legislature, signed into law by Governor Tom Wolf, Democrat, that leads to this controversial mail-in balloting that Republicans are woefully behind on when it comes to mobilizing voters on their side to vote. And that's driven, of course, in part by the fact that Trump was opposed to those mail-ins in 2020. And since then, Republicans throughout Pennsylvania aren't using them. Democrats have the upper hand. So by the time of the October 25th debate, when 2 weeks before the election, you had voters, you had almost 50% mail-ins had already been submitted at that time.
Right.
But there were so many factors here, Peter. You had at the top of the ticket on the gubernatorial side, Doug Mastriano.
You're trying to make me feel sorry for you, Charlie.
Right.
I'm the one who's out $5.
The worst nightmare imaginable for the Republican Party.
Right.
The greatest scenario for Josh Shapiro's gubernatorial campaign. In fact, his campaign ran advertising in the primary, hoping that Mastriano would be the candidate. They targeted voters who would vote for Mastriano. You have Trump's steep unpopularity in suburbia. You have abortion that turned out to be a mobilizing issue in suburban areas. And Republicans, it turns out, overplayed their hand on the issue of crime. One thing we can learn from this election is that suburbanites are living a parallel existence. Just where I am outside Philadelphia, people are no longer going into the city. The morning commute is a distant memory. It's something they did before COVID.
So crime is not as frightening if you're working from home on the main line outside Philly.
Right. And then the retailers on Walnut Street, they're opening their second locations on the main line. So you don't have to go to Boyd's off of Rittenhouse Square. You can go to Wayne and shop at Boyd's there. So there's this parallel existence. They're unaffected by District Attorney Larry Krasner. They may question Krasner's leadership in the city of Philadelphia, but they're unaffected by it. And they go to Democrat resoundingly in this election cycle. And it's fascinating.
Are they unaffected by it politically, or did they have something else more important on their mind when they voted? I guess what I'm trying to say is Republicans went in and they vote. Dr. Oz got more votes, did he not, than Mastriano?
Right. Oz compared to Mastriano did well, but Mastriano turned out to be the electoral doomsday machine for all Republican candidates statewide.
Right.
So,
but I guess what I mean is that there were some Republicans, a bunch of them, who went into the the voting booth and voted for Dr. Oz and did not vote for Mastriano.
That's right. We had ticket splitters, it turns out, throughout suburbia. To give you one example, there was a report recently after the election that in Bucks County, for example, the perennial swing county, 40,000 voters in Bucks who voted against Mastriano voted for Brian Fitzpatrick, the Republican congressman there, who's a moderate. And we learned from 2016 that Republicans can still do well in suburbia. With Pat Toomey, for example, that year, he won Chester and Bucks. But I think even since 2016, the suburbs have veered so leftward, especially in these healthcare-driven suburbs, that it's a long-term challenge for the Republican Party.
Ricochet. Join the conversation.